Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us here in the KXAN Live studio. I'm Will Dupree. We are going to be carrying a virtual news conference that's happening held by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT. It's an agency that we've become much more familiar with since February storms and those prolonged power outages that we all suffered through for several days. ERCOT is going to be discussing today what summer is going to look like for the state. And their assessment that they're releasing today and discussing is that the summer conditions that will be hot and dry. However, they are expecting the emergency conditions and the risk of going into those to be low because of generation capacity in the state. ERCOT is also going to send members of its staff to inspect what is happening at some of the power plants throughout the state for the first time to see how they're preparing for the summer weather. Let's take a listen as they discuss a few other topics. However, the big one will be what is going to be expected for the summer as they are anticipating record demand for electricity. Let's take a listen.
As Leslie said, my name is Warren Lasher. I'm the Senior Director of System Planning here at the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT. ERCOT has released two reports that look at the resource adequacy expectations for the ERCOT region. And before I describe those specific reports, I just wanted to take a step back and describe what I mean by resource adequacy. So with resource adequacy, I'm specifically talking about whether or not we expect to have adequate reserves of generation in order to meet the peak demands in the ERCOT region. And by that I mean on the hottest day of summer when consumers are using the most electricity across the span of the year, do we expect to have enough capacity in our generation resources in order to meet that peak demand? So the two reports that we've released are the Capacity Demand Reserves Report, which provides a long-term view of resource adequacy expectations, and then the Seasonal Assessment of Resource Adequacy, which looks at the next season and the season beyond that in terms of what actual operating conditions do we expect to see on the peak days of those upcoming seasons. Going into this summer season, the reserve margin has increased to 15.7%. And I say increased because several years ago, there was a retirement of several large coal plants, which led to a decline in the reserve margin in the ERCOT region. But since that time, there has been significant investment in new generation resources, specifically wind generation, gas generation, and solar generation, which has led to an increase in the reserve margin up to 15.7%. I would also note that this increase in the reserve margin has occurred while we continue to see increase in peak customer demands year on year, resulting from population growth in the state of Texas and increase in economic activity across the state. The seasonal assessment for resource adequacy for the summer season shows that in 3 of the 4 primary scenarios, we expect to meet peak customer demands while maintaining normal operating conditions. Only in the 4th primary scenario, which reflects the potential for very low wind generation output on the peak summer day, only in that scenario would we expect to have to enter emergency conditions in order to maintain grid reliability while meeting peak demand. And when I'm done, Dan Woodfin is going to describe what we mean by emergency operating conditions in more detail. The summer seasonal assessment also includes 3 additional extreme scenarios, which represent low probability but high risk potential impacts to the ERCOT system. Similarly, the fall seasonal assessment shows that in 3 of the 4 primary scenarios, we expect to be able to serve peak customer demands under normal operating conditions. The 4th scenario in the preliminary fall SARA, which reflects the potential for emergency conditions, is based off of weather conditions that were noted in late September 2005, a very, very hot day. And the load forecast for that fourth scenario, the peak demand forecast for that fourth scenario, is based off of those weather conditions that occurred back in late September 2005. Similar to the summer seasonal assessment, in the fall seasonal assessment, we have included 3 additional scenarios, which again reflect low probability but high risk events. And these extreme scenarios have been specifically added to restore trust in ERCOT's ability to assess and communicate the risks to the ERCOT grid. Complementing these seasonal assessments, the Capacity Demand Reserves Report provides a long-term view of resource adequacy in the ERCOT region. And the Capacity Demand Reserves Report that we have released shows we expect to see increasing reserve margins over the next few years, most notably due to significant interest in developing solar resources, in investors investing in solar resources here in the ERCOT region. A couple things to note. First of all, although we also see significant interest in battery resource development by investors, we currently do not count capacity from battery resources in these resource adequacy reports. The reason for that is specifically because we don't have enough operating experience to date to describe how likely it is, how much of that battery resource capacity we can expect to have available to serve customers during peak operating conditions. I would also note that the Capacity Demand Reserves Report reflects a snapshot of what we see today, most notably the potential future resources that are included in the Capacity Demand Reserves Report reflect resources that have reached specific milestones in the ERCOT interconnection process here in the ERCOT system. And also the dates for completion of those projects are based on information that's provided by resource developers. So again, the Capacity Demand Reserves Report reflects a snapshot of what we know today and should be expected to change over time. I would also note that the wholesale energy market here in ERCOT is specifically designed to reimburse companies for the energy that they produce. And as such, it is not designed to sustain significantly high reserve margins. As a result of that, it is reasonable to expect that we could see delays or cancellations of some of the new proposed generation facilities that are included in the Capacity Demand Reserves Report, or alternatively, we could see the retirement of some of the older, less efficient generation that's included in the current report. So with that summary, I will turn it over to Dan to discuss additional operational considerations for the upcoming summer season.
Okay, good afternoon. I've got some slides, and hopefully you're seeing those on the screen now that we'd like to go through with you. And before I talk about kind of our emergency procedures, what I'd like to share with you is a little bit about kind of how things normally operate in ERCOT, because I think that's important to understand kind of how we operate, what happens on a kind of a day-to-day basis. And so generally, ERCOT doesn't own any generation. We don't own the wires that you see down the sides of the highways or anything like that, or those wires being those things that are allowed to, or required to allow generation to get from the generating plants to the consumers. We don't own any of that. Basically, we're like an air traffic controller. And so what we're doing is monitoring and managing the flow of power around the system and responding to changing conditions. So under normal conditions, as people get up in the morning and turn their lights on and air conditioners start to run harder and harder during the summer afternoons as the air heats up and people want to stay cool, market participants, those market participants that own generators, will turn on those generators as the day goes on and as consumer demand rises. There'll be more generation turned online, and then ERCOT selects through a market process the most efficient generation of those generators that are online to serve the consumer's demand at that point in time. And we actually run that process every 5 minutes to always be optimizing what's the most efficient set of generators to serve the consumer demand of those consumers across the ERCOT region. We also make sure that a little additional capacity from generators is online. So the amount of generation that's online needs to be higher than the amount of actual demand. And that extra amount that's online is called our in consumer demand, or if one or two generators trip offline at a particular time, we have enough extra cushion there to make sure that we're maintaining reliability on the system due to those operating reserves. And so that goes on every day, day in and day out. And we also, in the power flowing from generators to consumers, through those wires, we make sure that that flow of power doesn't overload any of those transmission lines, the wires that are used to do that transfer. And so we have to be monitoring all that. It goes on every day, 24 hours a day. We're doing this optimization every 5 minutes, and that's really how we normally operate the grid. I thought it was good to provide that background before we go into kind of the emergency operations that Warren referred to. On the next slide, you see we'll start talking about some of our emergency procedures. When we get to one of those situations, because of the combination of things potentially that Warren talked about, where we have a very high demand day, where consumers have a lot of the air conditioners are all running full blast, and it's very hot across the entire state. If we get into a combination of that and low wind or low solar output or a high number of generators that have become unavailable because they've been running so hard or something like that, then we may need to, when we just don't have enough electric supply to balance with the demand on the system, then we may need to go into emergency operations. And emergency operations means that we've got an established set of procedures that we use, and when we initiate those procedures, it allows us to take advantage of additional generation capacity, additional demand response capacity, additional resources basically that are unavailable except during those emergency conditions. That's why they're designed. And so there are 3 different levels of this emergency operations. We call them, when we declare these emergency operations, we call them an energy emergency alert. So there's 3 different levels of that. And each level provides access to some additional emergency resources. And we can use these resources to protect against any kind of uncontrolled outage on the system and make sure we're, as much as possible, maintaining the balance between supply and demand. We currently, when we enter into these emergency operations, we have about 2,300 extra megawatts of capacity that's available from the emergency resources. But just for reference, one megawatt is enough to power about 200 Texas homes. So the 2,300 megawatts is enough for about nearly 500,000 homes to be served using these additional resources. So I mentioned that there are 3 different levels. We have level 1, level 2, level 3. This slide shows the additional resources that are available and the different types at different levels. In level 1 and level 2, we can bring to bear things like additional demand response. Consumers that have signed up to through our bidding process that we do to be able to reduce their demand during these emergency conditions on a limited basis. And we also have can import, if the market is not already scheduled power to come in over some of the ties, the limited number of ties that we have with other regions, we can bring additional capacity in on those ties under these emergency conditions. And there's some of these resources that are available in level 1, some are available in level 2. If those operating reserves that we talked about get reduced from the 2,300 when we would initiate emergency operations, if they get reduced a little more, we'll go into level 2, and if they get down to 1,375 megawatts, then we'll go into level 3. And if it continues to decline further, even using all of these emergency resources that I mentioned, that's the only time that we would need to initiate these controlled outages. And that's really a last resort to make sure that we're preserving the reliability of the system and keep the system intact so that we can get people's power back on as quickly as possible. So what are these controlled outages? They're really electric service interruptions that are ordered by ERCOT, but they're implemented by the electric utilities. And so what we decide is, or what we determine is, how much supply we have and how much we need to reduce the demand in order to maintain that supply-demand balance and preserve the reliability of the grid as a whole. And bring our operating reserves back to a safe level so that if something happens, we don't have some kind of bigger problem. Once we figure out how much, we order the electric utilities to implement that, and we're not responsible for determining how they implement it, what consumers are turned off, how they manage those interruptions. The electric utilities actually control that. And finally, I'll add that, I mentioned that this is kind of the third step of this process, but it's really, we've only gotten to that third step 4 times in the history of ERCOT since the 1970s. And so it doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, these additional when we do get tied, the market where the market hasn't we run out of capacity, and so because of these combination of conditions, the emergency things that we've got, the resources that we've got there, are enough to keep us out of these controlled outages. So it doesn't happen very often, but we do use those as kind of a last resort to maintain the reliability of the grid and get people back online as quickly as we can. So with that, I will turn it back to Leslie.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So at this time, we will go ahead and open the lineup for questions, and this will be operator assisted, so I will turn it over to the operator to begin that process.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing *1 on your telephone keypad. If you are using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. We ask that callers limit themselves to 1 question and 1 follow-up question. Again, press *1 to ask a question. We will pause for just a moment to allow everyone the opportunity to signal. Our first question is coming from Jeremy Rogalski with KHOU-TV. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to focus on the 3 extreme risk scenarios laid out in the final summer SAR report and your news release, which says that you have determined there's a 1% chance of these extreme scenarios actually occurring. What did you base that 1% figure on, and more importantly, how confident should Texans be that this really is a 1% possibility?
Obviously, the mathematics behind determining what that probability is complex, and it's complex partially because, to some extent, some of these impacts could be in some way correlated. As an example of that, under a very, very hot summer conditions, as you get later and later in the summer, the expectation would be that your outage rates would start to increase because you would have used some of your units that don't normally get used that often and would be increasing their potential for outages. So in the primary scenarios that we have for the seasonal assessment, you have one scenario for what if we have significantly increased outages? And then we have another scenario for what if we have significantly increased temperatures associated with a very hot summer? One of the extreme scenarios then says, well, what if we have both of those together? And what if we have very low wind conditions? So exactly calculating what the probabilities of those are in correlation with each other can be very complicated. But I would characterize them as at least a 1 in 100%, meaning no more than 1 in 100 potential outcome. So I think consumers in Texas can be very confident that these are extremely unlikely scenarios.
And thank you. To follow up, Mr. Lasher, you obviously recognize and understand that Texans don't have a whole lot of faith given the February event. And before the February event, ERCOT had publicly said, we expect to meet demand. And we all know what happened. And so talk to those Texans who say, why should we believe ERCOT now?
Well, I would say that we have developed these reports and tried to communicate based on recent operational outcomes what the potential outcomes for the upcoming seasons should be. But we recognize that we failed to appropriately communicate what the potential risks were going into the winter season. These additional extreme scenarios is our initial attempt to proactively try to not only communicate what those extreme risks are, but try to restore the trust of the consumers of Texas.
Thank you. We will take our next caller. That is Robert Arnold with KPRC TV. Please go ahead.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to have this news conference as well as answer questions. I appreciate it. My question follows up on what Jeremy was asking about reliability. One of the things that was said during the February event is that you felt you had planned for weather, but what you could not plan for was essentially nearly half of your generating capacity being offline at one point or another. So what can you do to reassure Texans that some type of massive outage will not happen again during peak summertime demand?
Well, let me start to respond to that, and Dan Woodfin may have additional comments. The Texas region, the generators in the Texas region traditionally have been extremely focused on operating under very hot conditions in the summer. And, in addition, they get tested on how able they are, how their capability to operate under hot conditions. They get tested every summer. Every summer we have hot periods, as opposed to winter conditions where it can be a decade, it can be more than a decade between some of these very extreme winter events. ERCOT staff, the generators, the transmission operators, we are very focused on summer operating conditions. And, I would also point back to the fact that we have come through several years now with significantly lower reserve margins, lower expectation of operating reserves. And we have maintained system operations under normal conditions throughout. Dan, do you have something you would like to add? Okay. Thank you. Did you have a follow-up on that?
One follow-up. Can you be a little more specific about your 15.7% reserve margin? I know you said it's a mix of investments in wind, solar, and gas. Can you be a little more specific and talk to the reliability of those reserves?
The reliability of those reserves is specifically assessed in the way that we include the various resources in our resource adequacy reports. So dispatchable units like gas, coal, nuclear, those are included in these reports at 100% of their expected summer ratings for this season, the summer season. Wind and solar resources are included only based on their historical performance under peak load, peak demand periods of the past few years. So there's actually a calculation that is laid out in our protocols that requires us to specifically look at the top 20 peak demand hours and look at the system performance of the various resources, solar and wind in particular, and only include those resources in these reports to the extent that they have performed under peak demand conditions historically.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Adela Uchida with CBS Austin. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for taking questions. My questions also had to do with the reserve. It was 2019 that we reported that we were going into the summer with a historically low reserve. I think that's what you mentioned a few years ago with some plants down. And then you talk about a 15.7% increase. But what does that mean? Does that mean we still have a low reserve? Do we have an ideal reserve? Do we have extra reserve? Should we feel good about the amount of reserve we have going into the summer, especially since the last 7 summers have been the hottest on record?
Well, couple different ways to look at that. I would specifically point to there is an industry standard that has been utilized for the past several decades, looking at the potential risk of of system outages of one event in 10 years. So there's the idea of having one consumer loss of load event, one event every 10 years. ERCOT recently did a study to look at different reserve margins and what the reliability expectations would be for the different reserve margins. That study was completed in January. It's posted on our website in the resource adequacy section. But what that study showed is that the reserve margin that would give you that expectation of one event in 10 years was 15.75%. So at 15.7%, we are just a tiny bit below that kind of industry standard 1 in 10 year outage expectation.
Thank you. We will move to our next question. That is coming from James Downing with Power Markets Today. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, this summer you're going to have the low system-wide offer cap in place. Do you anticipate there being any risks with that, or does the fact that you have like a bigger reserve margin kind of put you at ease?
I don't think I can speak to what the potential impacts of that are. I know that that is something that is continuing to be discussed at the Public Utility Commission of Texas.
They voted to keep it low cap in.
So you're saying they voted this morning to do that?
Yeah.
I apologize. I was busy getting ready for this discussion here. It potentially could have an impact, but I think in general, resource owners and consumers, especially the large commercial industrial consumers, I would expect that they would maintain a similar level of vigilance associated with the potential for scarcity conditions this summer.
And just another kind of unrelated question. I see you're getting a lot of solar in the next few years. I mean, are you going to see do you expect to see any kind of duck curve issues like California's had, or is that not something you're worried about?
Well, we continue to assess that. Obviously, to the extent that we can, we try to learn from other regions that have resource development in advance of us. Obviously, Texas, with the amount of wind that we have, the growing amount of solar, et cetera, we have some of our own unique challenges. One of the interesting things about Texas is that we have a significant amount of space east to west from the edge of the ERCOT region around the woodlands all the way out to far west Texas. And that gives us a much greater potential for diversity of solar resources. I would also note that a lot of the initial solar development was out in West Texas, which obviously the sun is still shining out in West Texas when we're starting to decline in peak demand in the eastern part of the state, in Houston, et cetera. But recently we're seeing significant interest in building solar resources all across the region. And so that should significantly increase the diversity of these solar resources. We also have conducted studies. I said, I noted the reserve margin study, the loss of load study that is posted on our website. That specifically looked at the potential impact of increased solar development on demand periods and what we call net demand periods. So consumer demand minus wind minus solar. And that indicated that not this summer, not next summer, would we expect to see kind of those same duck curve conditions. If we continue to see significant increase in solar development continuing on for several years, that may be something that is a consideration. I would also point back to the significant interest in developing battery resources on the grid. That will also play into that as well.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Tom Kleckner with RTO Insider. Please go ahead.
Hey, Warren, thanks for this. I just had a question about the migration of load from Lubbock Power and Light into ERCOT. Is that being taken into consideration in these reports?
Yeah, that's considered in all of these reports, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Lily Chung with NBC5 Dallas. Please go ahead. Lily, perhaps your phone line is muted. I do apologize, Lily. You are very distant. Could you please repeat your question? At this time, we will move on to our next caller. Our next caller is Keaton Fox with KTRK. Please go ahead.
Hey there, Warren. Thanks so much for taking the question. I think this is likely the first time that so many eyeballs are on ERCOT in a long time. Can you sort of simplify what is different between this forecast and the winter forecast to sort of help people understand what you're doing differently?
Well, so I'm not sure if your question is specifically focused on the demand forecast itself or on the seasonal assessment, the report in general.
Yeah, I think when we go back and you look at what you had predicted for winter, and you had obviously predicted that there would be plenty of capacity available. Right. Help this stupid TV reporter explain to the viewers what's different between that and now, a summer forecast that says the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. The big difference between winter and summer in Texas is that every summer in Texas is generally hot. Some are hotter than others. When we think about a hot summer in Texas, oftentimes what we remember is not so much the actual peak temperature, but the duration of those temperatures. Summer 2011, the hottest summer on record, there were many, many hot days, but it was really the extent of those hot days. So even in summers that are relatively milder, there are still several days when it is very hot. And what really drives the peak demand here in ERCOT is when it's hot both in Dallas, Houston, and potentially San Antonio, those major urban centers. That's what really drives the peak demand. But we see that frequently. And from a preparation and from a understanding the implications of what those temperatures mean in terms of likely peak demand, that is something that we have a lot of experience with. When you look at winter conditions here in Texas, every few years we will see a cold snap where we get a frost that heads down maybe to San Antonio. But these very extreme, severe winter conditions are very rare. And so entering a winter season, it's very hard to predict whether you're going to see one of those really very rare, extreme, deep winter freezes. And so it becomes a much more difficult thing not only to predict, but also to prepare for, because they are so rare.
And I think the other question that is on the minds of folks across Texas is that I think that we've heard from you admitting that communication was not great during the winter storm. Some of the alerts that come out from the system are very cryptic. They're hard to understand. What are you doing now to make sure that communication in the event of emergency is clear and gets out to the folks who need it?
Well, I would say that obviously we are committed to proactively improving our communication practices, working with the Public Utility Commission and working internally in order to make sure that that information is released as soon as we possibly can, with the understanding that sometimes the potential for emergency conditions can hit very, very quickly. But given that, we are committed to improving that process.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Mose Buchel with KUT 90.5. Please go ahead.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for doing this. I'm just curious how you take into account all of the stuff that's going on to ledge right now when it comes to your forecast. It seems that, I mean, obviously some of these new bills, if they do become law, it will take a little while for them to be implemented. But there are also things that are happening that could have an immediate impact on whether, someone decides to fund an energy project, for example. How do you look at that and then kind of come up with what you're going to expect in terms of the queue?
Yeah, obviously we can't speculate on what the legislature is going to pass this session. Obviously there's a lot of discussion going on many, many fronts associated with the electric utility business. From a resource development perspective, though, like I said in my introduction, the resources that are included in these reports are included in these reports based on specific milestones. And those milestones are outlined in our protocols in kind of the rules that we follow as an organization. So there's no flexibility in how we do that accounting. And the reports that we released today reflect a current snapshot, like I said, a current snapshot of which specific future facilities meet those specific requirements in the protocols.
And if I could just one quick second thing, there's been a lot of questions about the February blackout, but more recently we had the kind of it never got so far as an alert, but there was a call for conservation in spring, and after while that happened and after it happened, a lot of people speculated, well, if this is happening in the spring, what does this mean for the heat of summer? I know that you've kind of tackled this already, but if you could just kind of explain perhaps what your thinking is on that for those who might be concerned about where we were in the spring versus where we might be in August.
Yeah, so this is Dan. I'll take that one. I guess during summer, we typically have a very low number of, or relatively low number of generation outages. Both, because as Warren was describing earlier, there is really all the generators are really getting prepared, and they're designed so that they can operate under hot conditions. And what we saw back a few weeks ago when we got into some tighter conditions here in the springtime is that a lot of generation, they were coming off the February event, so we may have had units that were needed some repairs due to that. And then we always, during the springtime, because the demand on the system is much lower in the spring and also in the fall, that's when units schedule their maintenance outages to get ready for the upcoming summer peak season. And so we typically don't need as much generation during those spring and fall periods. And so that's when the generators take their outages to do all the repairs. And what we saw this year is that between kind of all of those maintenance outages, some of which were forced and some of which were kind of, they were intended to do maintenance on the facility so they wouldn't become forced outages. I saw a much higher number of those over the last month or two than what we had seen last year at this time. And so some of that may have been because of the winter storm. But it really makes sense for them to take those outages during this off-peak season. But what that means is when we do have a higher demand, or it almost resets the baseline. Warren's been talking about this baseline of, you've got really high demand, you've got really high generation availability, and then these variables that can happen around that, where you have a little more forced outages, a little less wind generation, a little less solar generation. During the summer, pretty much everything's online, so you're operating up here, and those variables are around that level, that higher level. In the spring period, you got a lot of generation outages, and even though the load's not as high, you've still got a lot of generation outages, and so those same variables that affect you during the summer can affect you during the spring and fall. And so that was one of the reasons we got into these tight conditions that, a few weeks ago and we didn't go into any kind of emergency or anything like that, but it did get a little tight, and it was because of that, just the large number of generation outages, even during this off-peak period, to get ready for summer.
Thank you. And once again, as a reminder to our audience, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. We will take our next question from Bob Feshler with Austin American-Statesman. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just was curious, you put in you mentioned that you're going to be inspecting or going to plants this summer or before the summer. And I was just wondering how many and what you anticipate doing there, because there aren't any weatherization minimum standards or anything like that.
Yeah, so all of the plants have to have a weatherization plan, not only for winter but also for summer, and so that's something that's already required for them to file with us, and we file it with PUC. We're planning on going, as Bob mentioned, that we're going out and doing these weatherization checks for summer conditions. We've historically done that for winter. This will be the first time we're doing that for summer. Since it's new, we're not going to be able to go to as many plants as we go to during the winter typically. I think the intent is to go we think we'll be able to get in about 30 plants and multiple units at different plants in preparation for this. And really what we're looking at is, things like, are you implementing your weatherization plan? Have you finished all of your maintenance to get ready for summer? Or have you looked at your cooling capabilities? Because you need to keep the plant, various parts of the plant cool. It's part of their kind of how a generator works. Different generators have different ways of, whether it's a cooling tower or something like that for as part of it. And have you prepared those facilities? And have you got your fuel ready for summer? And so those are the kinds of things that we'll be checking as we do these summer checks.
But I guess my point, though, is if they have to have a plan that they wrote themselves, and if you go out there and they haven't followed the plan and they don't appear to be prepared, there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Well, so I mean, it is true that there are no mandatory standards around that, right? But obviously, as Warren mentioned earlier, plants are really, in Texas particularly, because traditionally the highest demands are always during the summer. They're much more attuned to summer preparation anyway, and so we really don't expect that they wouldn't be doing those preparations for summer, because that, as Warren said, they get tested every year on that because it gets hot and we pretty much turn all the units on every summer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes today's question and answer session. Ms. Sopko, at this time, I will turn the conference back to you for any final remarks.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's call. And with that, we will go ahead and conclude our media call for today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for sticking with us here on KXAN Live. I'm Will Dupree. We just concluded that news briefing that the Electric Reliability Council of Texas held, discussing the anticipated demand for electricity this summer, and also discussing some of the ways that they're checking on how power plants will be able to produce enough generation to handle that record demand that's expected. ERCOT is going to be holding its first ever checks, going to about 30 power plants or so, to make sure that they're following things like weatherization, how they're cooling their equipment, and other kinds of maintenance that they are following at this time, to make sure that we avoid the situation that we ran into in February. The two officials that you heard from there included Warren Lasher. He is the Senior Director of System Planning. He was the first man who spoke, then followed by Dan Woodfin, who was the Senior Director of System Operations for ERCOT. You may remember Dan providing updates after that winter storm in February, along with the then CEO at that time. If you'd like to read a little bit more about what these reports they detailed included, they're available right now on our website. That's KXAN.com. You can also access that article on our app, so please download the KXAN News app on your smartphone if you've not done so already. We would appreciate it. You can find lots of resources there. And of course, we are going to continue following what ERCOT is reporting out there and carrying those updates for all of you, because I know that's a big point of concern, and there are many bills moving to the state legislature that would affect this operation. We will, of course, keep tracking that. Thank you all again for watching our stream. I'm Will Dupree here in the KXAN Live studio. We'll see you back here throughout the day with additional updates. Please, everyone, take care, stay safe, and be healthy.